Welcome to the channel for the future caretakers of resurrected species. Welcome to the Paleo-Zoo-Keepers Association.
Oh, hello there. Welcome to the Paleo-Zoo-Keeper Association. My name is Austin. I know a lot of us have things to say about the third Jurassic World movie, Jurassic World Dominion. Well, I definitely would admit that focus too much on the bugs rather than on the dinosaurs living with us sort of thing. However, it did bring up some images and stuff that, while definitely not taking the good part of the movie, is still there and gives you interesting. One of them of which was one of the scenes in the end of the movie where we basically see footage of an Apatosaurus browsing on a tree that is claimed to be in the Redwoods. And now this has got me wondering, what would it be like if Apatosaurus was in the Redwoods? Now, this is going to be the topic of this video. Well, first things first, let's first look at our species in question. One of the famous dinosaurs, Apatosaurus.
The Apatosaurus, or the deceptive lizard, is a sauropod dinosaur, one of the long-necked dinosaurs from the Diplodocid groups. Basically included other sauropods such as Diplodocus and Brontosaurus. It was found in the North American continent around 150 million years ago, said to be the late Jurassic period, in the Morrison Fossil Formation. On size, the largest it would be 69 to 75 feet long, 15 feet tall at the hips. The height of the head can go a lot higher, thanks to that neck, and they will weigh between 33 and 35 tons. They are also primarily herbivorous dinosaurs, but we'll get to the details on their diet later on in the video. Apatosaurus, in its native habitat, has shared its habitat with other well-known dinosaurs, such as Stegosaurus and Brachiosaurus, and even been hunted by predators such as Allosaurus. Now, mind you, in this scenario, it'll only be Apatosaurus that will be taken in the modern context for this video, none of the other dinosaurs, like it was in the Jurassic World movies. How much effect this will have, we'll definitely get to that later in the video. And the modern-day ecosystem and location that the Apatosaurus will be introduced to in this scenario would be the Redwoods, more specifically, the Redwood National Park in the more northern parts of California. Both located in the Del Norte and Humboldt counties of northwestern California, the Redwoods National Forest biome is a temperate rainforest with an average temperature of mid-40s to low 60s degrees Fahrenheit, surprisingly not too dissimilar to that of the Jurassic period's weather. This national park has over 800 species of flora, including the famous namesake of the park, the coastal redwoods. The redwoods are also home to over 200 species of animals, from the banana slugs to the Roosevelt elk.
As you can see, the Redwoods is a very fascinating place, and it gets very interesting on how the Apatosaurus would affect the ecology of the Redwoods. Now, for this, I'm going to start how its effects on the ecology from the animal's own beginnings. Literally. Now, this is an ostrich egg, and here's actually where it gets interesting, that the really large sauropods, especially Apatosaurus, that are bigger than an elephant, and obviously and even big as some houses, start off from an egg, actually no bigger than ostrich eggs. So this is definitely going to be very interesting.
From what we understand from sauropod nests that we have found in the fossil record, uncertain if we found any Apatosaurus nest sites, but from what we know from other sauropods, Apatosaurus would lay between 14 to 40 spherical, around the size of an ostrich egg or bigger, eggs and in a bowl-shaped nest or in an elongated pit, likely lay the eggs over a period of between 2 to 4 weeks. And sauropods likely incubate their eggs by covering their nests with vegetation with the heat from the decaying plants to help hatch them. I mean, these animals are big, there's no way they're going to sit on them. And while there would occasionally be sauropods that would guard their nests from predators and pests, like how crocodiles would, and they probably would behave like this in herd defense as well. Even though, in this scenario, the Apatosaurus has escaped from the usual nest raiders of the Morrison Formation, from various theropod dinosaurs to small lizards, there are definitely a good amount of animals within the redwoods that are potential nest raiders that would definitely love to make a meal out of sauropod eggs. One group of animals that would most certainly be a danger to Apatosaurus nests would be mustelids and their relatives, such as raccoons, skunks, and while very rare, wolverines. And wolverines in particular would definitely be a glutton of the Apatosaurus nest sites. If Now for skunks and raccoons, they definitely will go with that as well. As long as they can be able to figure a way to break the eggshells, they would definitely make a meal out of Apatosaurus eggs. Another group of native mammals that would definitely make a meal out of Apatosaurus eggs, given the opportunity, would be the native canids of the woods, primarily foxes and coyotes. Wolves would be able to do that as well, but wolves are not very commonplace in the redwoods, at least as of yet. But definitely know that the canids of the redwoods would most definitely make a meal out of sauropod eggs whenever they get the opportunity. But there is one opportunistic animal that in the redwoods that would most definitely make a meal out of a whole nest of sauropod eggs if given the chance, and they would definitely not turn away from the opportunity. That animal in particular would be the native American black bear.
Drilling holes in eggs and ostrich eggs, that's the best way to open them up. Now, while we don't know exactly what the caloric intake or the amount of calories a sauropod egg would have, we can reasonably assume that it'd probably be similar to an ostrich egg, for example. And this one ostrich egg alone can be able to have these 2,000 calories worth of calories in one sitting. That's a lot of calories. So this would be a very valuable thing for wild animals to go for, especially the black bears. Well, black bears would love these. If we're assuming that the sauropod egg has 2,000 calories per egg, then taking that in the summer, a black bear needs a caloric intake of 5,000 calories in one day. So that will basically be between 2 to 3 sauropod eggs. But in autumn, they'll need 20,000 calories per day. That's basically 10 of these eggs a day. So, especially depending on when the sauropods lay their eggs, it's going to be a really big meal, and one that they'll definitely want to go for.
If the eggs were able to make it, the incubation period of between 65 to 82 days, this estimate is based off of the use of avian clutch mass to adult size ratios and avian incubation rates for the large sauropod eggs. Once they hatch, the hatchlings, or better known as sauropodlets, would most likely run to the deepest parts of the woods, instinctively where they can hide amongst the ferns and other such plants. And when danger comes about, they will most likely lay still in the foliage, much like deer fawns would. While the theropods in the Apatosaurus native range, large and small, are absent in the redwoods, there are still a large amount of predators that they will have to deal with as they grow. Just like how they would definitely go for their eggs, the native canids, such as foxes, coyotes, and even wolves, would most certainly go after the sauropodlets at that small of size. The native felines of the redwoods would most certainly go after them as well, especially when they're small, such as mountain lions and even the other feline species such as bobcats. And ironically, while the exact theropods that Apatosaurus have dealt with in the Morrison Formation initially would not be there, their relatives, the birds of prey, will also be there, and they would definitely most likely hunt the sauropodlets as well, especially the eagles, such as the bald and golden eagles. And there's a possibility that hawks and other such raptors would be able to hunt them as well, given the chance. And just like with eggs, definitely know and definitely be certain that the American black bear would also hunt the sauropodlids whenever the chances is there. While while black bears are primarily omnivores and a good amount of their diet would be vegetation and insects, they definitely will go after small animals, from ground squirrels, rodents, and in this case, definitely sauropodlids. While the other predators that I mentioned would definitely be a danger to the sauropodlids. One group that I think would definitely be a significant risk for sauropodlids would be the mustelids, primarily the fisher and the wolverines. I say that because mustelids have been documented to surplus kill quite significantly, kill more animals than they need. And I definitely believe that they will definitely do this to sauropodlids as well, occasionally. And both the fisher, which is ironically not an aquatic or semi-aquatic mustelid, and the wolverine would definitely do so. But thankfully, for the case of the sauropodlids, these two mustelids are significantly rare, so they're not very common. So they will be probably given some reprieve from that for the moment. Along with eating plants like the adults, they will also most likely occasionally consume insects for extra protein and calcium, and perhaps even eating some carrion to supplement their diet. As they get older, their caloric demands will increase, and with them getting bigger, they will not be as covert as they once were. As they get older and as they get larger, their vulnerability to predators will decrease. However, until they reach to a certain size, they will still be vulnerable to some predators, like in this case, packs of wolves.
According to scientists, by looking at histologic lines that are like the tree rings within the bones, and measuring the bone length in relation to body size, it would take a Apatosaurus at least 15 years to reach its fully grown 30 plus ton weight. Which means that at maximum, not always, but at maximum, they can grow at a rate of 5,000 kilograms or 11,000 pounds a year. That's only once they reach to a certain age. And I can imagine that as soon as the Apatosaur hatchlings or sauropodlets reach to at least to get past the 1 ton in weight, that would pretty much render it nearly, or if not completely, unhuntable to all the native predators of the redwoods.
When fully grown, the Apatosaurus will be the largest herbivore in the whole redwoods. And of course, with this size, they will definitely have one heck of an impact on the ecology of the redwoods. In its native ecology, it is assumed that the Apatosaurus is a low-browsing animal. Though with its long neck, it could occasionally browse on the tops of trees, but we'll get into more details on that later. While they are definitely able to browse on the tops of trees, especially coniferous trees, Their diet would most likely mostly obtain of ferns and horsetails, and due to their special digestive strategy, horsetails are the best feedstuffs for Apatosaurus. Just like all sauropod dinosaurs, Apatosaurus cannot chew their food like mammals could. Instead, their teeth are designed to rake up vegetation and strip leaves from branches. How they're able to grind their food is by swallowing stones for their gizzards, much like birds do today. Angiosperm plants, basically flowering plants, well, for the most part, may be seen unlikely. There is evidence to suggest that such plants did came about around the same time and place that Apatosaurus did. I mean, while it's not high in the diet, it is within the realm of possibilities. So I could definitely probably say it could be able to make do with such plants. Grass? Not likely, since that A, there is no grass found in the Morrison Formation, and B, their teeth are not designed for it, so it's not likely they'll eat grass. Now, I'm pretty sure some of you out there are saying that grass has been found in the coprolites or fossilized dung of a titanosaur, which is a type of sauropod. While that is definitely true, I would have to say, though, that titanosaurs are very different than apatosaurs. In fact, sauropods are a very diverse group. One key difference between the apatosaurs and other diplodocids from the other sauropods is that they're the one sauropod species that can actually rear up very nicely to be able to feed or defend themselves. Some sauropods, like the Titanosaurs, for example, their backs are way too flexible to make this even possible. So they keep all their feet on the ground and no rearing up. If so, very barely. And I'm sorry for my fellow Jurassic Park fans, but with their limb proportions and their feet, Brachiosaurs would not have been able to rear up their hind legs like that as well. And I guess you can imagine that in the place like the Redwoods, this ability to rear up will definitely come in handy for when they're feeding. With all this in mind, there's a load of flora that the sauropods could be able to feast upon while in the redwoods. Along with the famous coastal redwoods, there's Douglas fir, different types of spruce, and other varieties of trees. There's also a variety of ferns on the redwoods, which include but are not limited to lady fern, western sword fern, deer fern, wood fern, and leather fern, which is a type of fern that actually grows in the canopy. And there are definitely a large amount of horsetails that grow in the redwoods, especially the giant horsetail. Due to their great size, long necks, and abilities to rear up, the Apatosaurus can be a very great versatile herbivore in this environment and browse on all the previous mentioned plants, even the leather fern that grows in the canopy. Also, riparian plants, basically plants that grow in and on the waters, would definitely be a good meal for Apatosaurus as well. While they will not live in amphibious lifestyles like hippos, like they were initially thought to live as, they would still definitely love to feast upon such plants.
Mind you, according to scientists, Apatosaurus eat up to 400 kilograms or 880 pounds of food in one day. Obviously, big animal like Apatosaurus eats a lot of food. Now, mind you, the redwoods is very similar to the to 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 the habitat that the Apatosaurus was originating from. The only difference, well, at least one major difference, is that it gets more moist in the redwoods than it did there back in the time when these guys were still around. So, which means that with that moisture, it will definitely provide more green material. So, I can imagine that An area like the Redwoods could be able to support hundreds or more like thousands of Apatosaurus in there. So it's definitely going to be a lot of food in there. Mind you, this is definitely going to have quite a bit of consequences.
The effects that the Apatosaurus would have on the ecology of the redwoods would definitely be immense, especially with the absence of the other herbivorous species of dinosaurs that it shared within the Morse Formation ecology. That is primarily because that with the absence of the other large herbivorous dinosaurs, from stegosaurs, arthropods, and other sauropods, then there would be much more food available for the Apatosaurus. And it's possible that the Apatosaurus can even reach to foods that are generally not much available to the Apatosaurus when other species of dinosaurs are around, especially with the other species of sauropods. Not only would there be a lack of competing large herbivorous dinosaurs, there will also be the lack of the large theropod predators such as Allosaurus that are from the Morrison Formation. Without these large predators, this will have devastating consequences from the Apatosaurus population. Not only would the lack of the predators would not be able to control the populations and numbers of the Apatosaurus, but also their behavior as well.
Without these large predators to manage the herbivores' behaviors, with the ecology of fear not present, this would affect the sauropod's behavior that would immensely devastate the local ecology. Without the ecology of fear, the Apatosaurs will simply not migrate as often and concentrate their grazing efforts on certain areas. And one of these areas that would definitely be negatively affected are riparian areas or areas near the water. This is primarily because, for the most part, large predators often hunt their prey around rivers and other sources of water. Any, both A, that's one place that they know the prey will go to, and B, there's a lot of vegetation there. But with the ecology of fear, the herbivores would not stay at these water sources for very long. They'll take a drink, probably eat some plants, and then just get out of there and not stay there for very long, for in fear of being hunted. Without that ecology of fear, the Apatosaurs will definitely not do this. They'll stay in the water longer and will browse down all the plants, especially the riparian plants, and this unfortunately would increase soil erosion and would be able to decrease the quality of the water, affecting fish stocks and so forth.
Along with that, there are other ecological effects that Apatosaurs would cause that are similar to that of elephants, but on a much larger scale, such as reducing vegetation density, opening up forests, reducing wildfire fuel, toppling over small trees and saplings, and reducing tree richness. As mentioning, the sauropods' activities, especially on the browsing, would open up the forest and make turn it into a more open woodland. And as is noticed in areas where it's been opened by logging, the populations of several herbivores, such as deer, elk, and rabbit, have exploded due to the meadows that have been expanded. With the populations of these prey animals increasing, the populations of predators, such as cougars and wolves, would increase as well, and this would unintentionally increase predation pressures onto the sauropodlets, negatively affecting the success and survival rates of these little baby dinosaurs. Of course, this will not go well for all the species of the redwoods. For example, small tree-dwelling species like squirrels would be negatively affected by this. While most of the deer that are native to the redwoods, especially the Roosevelt elk, would definitely approve of this new change in the environment, there is one species of deer that would not approve of this change in the environment at all: the moose. This is because that unlike other deer species such as elk and mule deer, the moose's diet does not consist on grass. In fact, if a moose had attempted to consist primarily on grass, it would develop chronic wasting issues. In fact, the moose is primarily a browser, mostly focusing on trees, shrubs, ferns, and even riparian plants for subsistence. Unfortunately, however, these types of plants are pretty much the same variety of plants that the Apatosaurus likes. So, with them having to compete with a much larger herbivore, one would definitely expect that the moose population in the redwoods would develop a decline. Along with the Apatosaurus's browsing and consumption of plant matter, there is also the defecation of feces that the large sauropods would produce. Sauropods have been known to be able to produce between 1,870 to 3,000 pounds of manure at once. Of course, that is one big pile of beep. Much like how it happened in Australia when cattle were introduced and prior to the introduction of dung beetles, the sauropods of dung would not be able to be broken down by the native insects, which would leave them to end up baked in the sun. And unfortunately, this amount of manure would definitely increase the amount of flying insects within the area. The increased amounts of flying insects, such as flies, would definitely be annoying. But some species, like bats, would definitely find this sort of arrangement to be agreeable. Without any organisms that could be able to break down this large amounts of manure, it would stagnate, and during rainy seasons, it could cause runoffs that will cause algal blooms in riparian areas such as lakes and rivers, and which would deplete the oxygen of the water and kill off large amounts of fish. While I doubt that native decomposers would be able to handle these large piles, fungi could make food out of them and be able to cause nutritional explosions within the redwoods. And if these piles were trampled by the sauropods, they could be trampled down to the point of becoming soil for plants. However, without an organism that could be able to break down these piles would do more harm than good. Along with a lot of dung, the Apatosaurus would also produce a lot of methane gas. Jokes aside, scientists estimate that a sauropod dinosaur like Apatosaurus would produce as much as 4.2 pounds of methane daily, compared to a cow, which would give up a daily amount of 0.4 to 0.7 pounds of methane in one day. That means that one adult Apatosaurus will produce as much methane as 6 or 10 cows. And, for example, if you had just 100 head of Apatosauruses, they will produce as much methane as 600 to 1,000 cows. So, if you were to resurrect Apatosaurus and they were in large numbers, they would emit enough methane to the atmosphere to theoretically contribute to climate change.
Just as much as an Apatosaurus' life would affect the ecology of the redwoods, its death would also have an immense effect on the ecology as well. Especially for big animals such as this.
Even though they would be free of predation once past the ton in weight or more, they would still die, not as often, but they would still die from accidents, starvation, old age, disease, and so on. There are still things that could kill them. Not enough to curb the numbers, but still significantly enough to be able to allow some carcasses to lie around every now and then. Of course, when that happens, scavengers of the redwoods would definitely take advantage of it. One problem that the scavengers of the redwoods would face when dealing with an Apatosaurus' carcass is that the hide is most likely very thick and most likely that most of the scavengers of the redwoods would not be able to get into the hide right there and then. If it's not been open, it's most likely that it will be open after gases build up in the body and, well, the body explodes. This has been observed in beached whale carcasses, and definitely going to be messy, smelly, and if any animal was unfortunate enough to get in the way when that happens, ugh. Among all the scavengers that reside in the redwoods, the American black bear would definitely be one of the animals, one of the few, that has the strength and weaponry to be able to open up the carcass of the Apatosaurus. On a side note, it seems that the presence of these sauropods could potentially have a positive effect on the black bears in a way. Their eggs would become a nutritious meal, their sauropodlets would be a good snack every now and their carcasses would obviously be a great source of protein for them. Even by the sauropods, ecological effects can have some positive benefits for the black bears. The opening of the meadows, which increases the numbers of rabbits and deer, would definitely benefit the bear, especially if they hunt them or scavenge them off of other predators like wolves. And their potential habit of pushing over trees would become a good place for some species of plants that the bears like to eat, especially the huckleberry, which are known to be able to grow out of near down trees or stumps, even out of them too. So it definitely seems that sauropods could be a great benefit for these bears. Many other scavengers and even many of the large predators of the redwoods would definitely benefit from this occasional feast. While rare, the wolverine will definitely benefit from these carcasses of the Apatosaurus. And just like their name, they will definitely be immensely gluttonous about it. Whenever possible, a pack of wolves will definitely scavenge off of the carcass of an Apatosaurus. Ever the crafty, opportunistic, the coyote will definitely take advantage of an Apatosaurus carcass anytime one is available, and especially when one is opened. This feast will not be limited to just the mammals. The birds will definitely want a piece of the pie as well, especially the ravens, crows, eagles, and vultures. Obviously, the vultures will definitely love a taste of the Apatosaurus carcass. But out of all the avian residents of the redwoods, none would benefit from the Apatosaurus carcasses more so than the Californian condor. This is because during the Ice Age, the Californian condor was very widespread across the continent. That is because at that time, there was a large supply of megafauna that provided meat from their carcasses: ground sloths, mammoths, giant bison, and so forth. But when those animals died out, they became restricted only to the coast, where they provide a significant amount of meat throughout the years. And then, in recent times, due to habitat destruction, hunting, consumption of lead bullets, and so forth, the California condor was almost driven to extinction. It wasn't until decades ago that the California condor was able to bounce back from the brink of extinction, even being reintroduced into parts of his range, and the redwoods being amongst them. So, with this scenario of large animals being introduced to the redwoods that provide carcasses that are larger any than any animal that the condor has faced before in its natural habitat, even larger than the largest Columbian mammoth, it's definitely safe to assume that when these carcasses are available, they would definitely benefit the Californian condors most immensely so. Even though these carcasses would provide a lot of meat for the scavengers and predators of the redwoods, Without the large predators that are used to consuming Apatosaurus carcasses, such as Allosaurus, these carcasses will not be cleaned up fast enough. It will take a long time for these animals, for the native redwood animals, to be able to clean up these carcasses. And by then, the carcasses will become rotten, and unfortunately, this kind of rottenness would encourage the develop occurs like seas or oceans of maggots, and unfortunately, this would definitely change the microenvironment of the forest soil, which would definitely have negative consequences and perhaps even make it more acidic. As you can see, the Apatosaurus will have a huge ecological effect in the redwoods. However, there is also another effect that the Apatosaurus would have in and around the redwoods, and that will be on the human aspect of the redwoods. And these dinosaurs will have an effect on this aspect in more ways than one. One effect would be that with the increase of some prey animals like deer and rabbits, it would definitely be a great benefit for the hunters that live near the redwoods. As the populations explode and they spread out to other areas, it will definitely be a hunter's paradise in that regard. However, as mentioned before, the increase of prey animals will also increase the number of predators. And for farmers that live close to the area, this will definitely be a very negative effect on their livestock. So one could definitely expect more human and wildlife conflicts in regards to livestock. Also, with the increase of the deer populations, there would unfortunately be an increase of road collisions between cars, drivers, and deer. Speaking of road collisions, with the Apatosaurus in the redwoods, and of course there'll be roads and highways there will definitely be an interesting interaction between drivers and Apatosaurs when it comes to this sort of ordeal. One would be that with them being such large creatures and slow moving, a herd or even a single Apatosaurus would definitely cause a lot of traffic jams, much like the buffalo in Yellowstone National Park do. One such ordeal that would be related to that would definitely be the car accidents as a result of collisions between vehicles and the Apatosaurs, especially in days when visibility is limited. Especially, I can imagine this will be an ordeal if a semi truck collided with an Apatosaurus. Another thing that would bring conflicts between Apatosaurus and humans is when it comes to crops. Now, it's uncertain whether Apatosaurus would eat our crops or not, but even if they don't, they would still trample over them, costing the farmers a lot of income. While we definitely do not know when their mating season would be, it's definitely safe to say that during the mating season, the Apatosaurs will get very destructive, dangerous, and immensely loud, which either or would definitely negatively affect humans, whether their fights would make them unintentionally trample over buildings, they had a rutting behavior that would make them aggressive towards humans, or that all the vocalizations and their tail whips cracks, which are as loud as cannons, mind you, would be agonizing to the ears of nearby neighbors. Regardless, With an Apatosaurus in the Redwoods, tourism of the national park would increase immensely. Like the Mustangs of North America, or the cocaine hippos of Colombia, the Apatosaurus will definitely be popular to the public, and would definitely be the epicenter of many ecotourism businesses of the area.
Regardless, one thing is definitely certain that the Apatosaurus were in the Redwoods, and they're popular enough to stay in the Redwoods. Their population is going to need to be managed, especially since there's the absence of their native large predators like Allosaurus, and of course, no one wants to have those introduced to the modern era. So there's definitely going to be a lot of conflicts. There will be definitely calls for calling operations or even recreational hunting or even commercial hunting because like I mentioned in my scavenger part of the video, this large animal can contribute a lot of meats, and there will definitely be calls for commercial harvesting of the apatosaurs to control their numbers. But just like with horses or any animal, a lot of large charismatic animals actually, there will be calls against this, and there will be calls for like non-lethal population control methods such as sterilization. Now, don't know how to sterilize or whether by neutering or injection to sterilize an apatosaurus or any kind of dinosaur. Honestly, but until that occurs, until that's being able to be done, if you, population control for large sauropod dinosaurs like this in the wild, calling operations are or hunting, whether it's recreational, trophy, or commercial hunting, is probably going to be the best option. Or the removal of eggs from the wild environment from their nesting areas. That's another option too. But regardless, having such a large megafaunal predator, I mean herbivore, in the environment, you're definitely going to need to manage this animal.
Regardless, lethal or non lethal, managing the sauropod population in the Redwoods would definitely be needed because, regardless whether they're native or not, any animal at a overpopulation would decimate the habitat that they are in. The Apatosaurus in the Redwoods would definitely be no different. As one could perhaps tell, the Apatosaurus would do very well in the Redwoods. It definitely seems to suit it well, but if not managed by population wise, it would definitely be devastating for the environment. Which is basically true for all creatures in this world. Hey guys! If you made it to the end of this video, thank you ever so kindly for watching. Just like I mentioned, since I saw that very couple second clip at the end of Jurassic World Dominion of Apatosaurus in the Redwoods, it's definitely been crossing my mind for a long time. Especially since some of my favorite dinosaur documentaries includes Dinosaur Planet's Alpha's Egg and the Titans episode on Walking with Dinosaurs. I definitely thought I would do a video about this sort of thing for my Paleo-Vaders series. I want to say a special thank you to the artists Keenan Taylor, Taliesin, Coleman, and Rockntooth. You guys were able to make my illustrations and concepts a reality. Thank you ever so kindly for that. If you guys are interested in these artists and their works, I will leave links to their DeviantArt pages and or YouTube pages down in the description box below. Also want to say thank you to my Patreons, both paid and unpaid. Your support definitely helps me out. If you'd like to be a paid patron on Patreon, I'll leave a link to my Patreon page down below. And also, it's a great thank you to viewers like you. Thank you. Also, make sure to hit that like subscribe button. Every little bit helps. Taliesin Coleman, also known as Taliesaurus from DeviantArt, is an artist that is also working on his own project, the Dinoverse Project.
Dinoverse is a 6-book series written by the late Scott Cianson between the years of 1999 and 2000s. The main premise is centered around these teenagers who, through some strange science-ish accident, have their minds, souls taken out of their respective bodies, transported millions of years into the Mesozoic, and then placed into random pre-existing dinosaurs. Think of it as like a strange form of possession rather than full-on transformation. The series is broken up into 3 different adventures, with the first following a teenage dino geek by the name of Bertram Phillips makes a science fair project that accidentally sends his mind and the minds of 3 other students he had encountered that day back 67 million years into the bodies of dinosaurs in the Hell Creek Formation of South Dakota. In order to get back, they have to cross 300 or so miles of wilderness to the mysterious Standing Stones of Montana. Now they must work together to solve a puzzle to get back home, or risk being trapped in the bodies of dinosaurs forever. Will they succeed, or will they go extinct?
If you want to see more of his fan art and work, definitely take a look at his DeviantArt page and the link down below. To my United States audience, happy Thanksgiving to you all. I hope you all have a great day with your friends and family, watching the game, watching the parade, eating lots of turkey and other Thanksgiving meals, and having a nice relaxing day. So again, happy Thanksgiving, guys. Regardless of whether you celebrate Thanksgiving or not, I hope each and every one of you has a grand day. Adios.